everyone, although it looks like everyone so far is just you and me, Laurel.
Oh, I think people are filtering in.
People are coming in. Welcome everyone to our first Friday Ask Me Anything. We took a little break over the summer, so we're glad to have everybody back, even though, Laurel, it seems like that means that the summer is over, which is kind of a bummer. But oh well, that's how it goes. We're having a little technical difficulties with Karen, but she should be here shortly. So but I wanted to, I think this is her. All right, the band is all together. Hello, Karen, how are you?
Late, but I'm good.
You made it. Better late than never.
Yeah, thank you, Laurel.
Absolutely.
So how this works is please either type your question in the Q&A or in the chat, and just let us know what's on your mind and what you're thinking about. And while you do that, I think we had a couple of questions before that people emailed to us. So I have one. Laurel, I know you had one. You want to kick us off with the first one?
Sure. And I will just apologize in advance. I'm not in my office. I'm extending my summer. It is still Labor Day weekend, so I'm on the road. I'm in another place, and my internet is maybe a little spotty. So just want to apologize in advance for any connection issues I might have. But I do have a question to kick us off, and this is a good one, and so I'll read it out. She said, a question that's very alive for our organization right now is how to convert program-specific donors to general fund donors. We are a very lean organization, maybe too lean for all we're doing, you can all probably relate to, and very successful in gaining funding for specific programs. Because of program growth the past couple of years, our operating budget is also growing, and we need to focus on new unrestricted gifts or encouraging donors in this direction. So I think this is a great question. I'll love to hear what either of you think about this.
Well, I'll jump in. I think that your best next gift is from a current donor. So if you need unrestricted dollars, then you have to give people a reason, the people who are investing in your programs, a reason to also be a regular, unrestricted annual fund donor. But they need reasons. And it can't just be like, oh, everything is expensive. It has to be, even though that actually is a legitimate reason, people have that we have expenses, but what would you do with this money? And one of the best ways I know how to sort of start something like that is actually to ask one of your best donors, one of your best program donors who has the ability to do more, and go seek their advice. Go say, this is what we're trying to do. This is why it's important. Here's how we're thinking about talking about it. What do you think? How does that resonate with you? How might we get others? And that person's going to give you some great ideas. And of course, they're going to give you that first, let's try it on me kind of a gift. So that's one strategy. There's others. So I'd like to hear what Laurel and Bob think.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I think overall, you have to make the case for, why you need the money and why it's important. And I think that, Karen, as you were kind of alluding to testing that, and, once you have some, or at least using your donors as a means of maybe generating that case. But I think, establishing what that case is and then using it across your fundraising, figuring out like what is compelling, why do you need it, what's going to be different because of this unrestricted money, and start to talk about that on a regular basis, no matter what the fundraising that you're doing is. And I think too, and I'm going to anticipate what Laurel's going to say, so I won't get into it too much, but I think this becomes part of like a big vision, having a, see, I know you, Laurel, having a vision and where everything fits under it, your projects and general operating as well. And, talking about that big vision so that no matter what people are giving to, it's kind of fitting into that big idea. But I will, I will defer over to Laurel to,
You really did you really did exactly read my mind, Bob. That was exactly where I was going to go. And, I think that, in our business, we are so fond of widgets. We are so fond of being able to kind of sell something. That's why events tend to be so popular. And, I think sometimes we use program as a widget, right? We kind of, it's easier for us in a lot of ways to say, I need you to, if you give me $1,000, it will buy this, right? And so I think sometimes we have to be really critical about how we're asking for money, because I think sometimes we're shooting ourselves in the foot, right? Because people are giving to us what we're asking them for. So if we're asking them to fund program specific things, then that's what they're going to give us, right? And so I think you're absolutely right, Bob. I think it's being able to say, here's our vision, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and here's the way we're doing that. And then letting them fund what you're trying to accomplish, right? Versus what you're doing. And I think that is all about vision. And I love, Gail in the chat mentioned, adding overhead costs and administration to your program proposals. That's a big one. And I think even with individual donors where maybe we're not putting together specific proposals, just being willing to put it out there that we need you to fund our impact. And we'll figure out how to get to that impact. We'll put the money in the right place to get the impact, but what you're really funding is the outcome, not the thing that's getting us there.
And don't forget dual asks. One of the things we do is we only ask for the program, but there is no reason why you can't say, Laurel, we'd really love for you to invest in big impact by giving to this program and giving to our leadership annual program, whatever you call that, and making that a dual ask. And especially important for your larger donors, so that you don't always have to get unrestricted from new, smaller gifts.
Yeah, that it actually, I'll just segue into a question I actually got during a session I did at a conference this week. And, we were talking about engaging donors, and he said, when we're going into a campaign, how do I, with my annual fund donors, how do I then ask them for a campaign gift without sacrificing their annual fund? And, or he said, essentially he said, do I just ask them for a campaign gift and then not ask them for anything else? And I think that it gets exactly to your point, Karen, about, kind of being able to say, we hope that, that we have this really urgent and exciting project that we're working on. And we hope that in addition to your annual fund gift, that you'll continue to support us at
your increased annual fund.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, good answers, everyone. So we have a question in the chat, and the question is, what is a common program to administrative ratio for a startup not-for-profit on year 7 of existence?
So,
yeah, that's always an interesting it's always an interesting question to me when we talk about because I think for a really long time, you kind of, people would look at like their GuideStar ratings and all of those kinds of things. What is the program and administrative costs, and is that out of whack? Is it too much? And I think there was a real pushback a while ago, a few years ago, to say, maybe we as a sector shouldn't be encouraging donors to be so critical of that. So I think first and foremost, my initial response to that is, it depends, right? It depends on where you are. It depends on what's going on at your organization. I think the most important thing is you need to be prepared to talk to a donor about why it is what it is. I think general rules of thumb out there, right, is, somewhere, Bob, you probably know this better than I do, no more than 20%, right, is admin and fundraising or, whatever that is. But I've seen organizations that, because they are in growth mode, they've gone out and they've hired a bunch of new development staff in anticipation of growing program needs. So there might be a year where their fundraising costs are huge compared to their program costs, but it's for a very strategic reason. And I think being able to understand your finances, understand why your balance is like that, and then be able to go to donors and say, we're doing this because we want to run a sustainable business, right? And so I think, I'm less concerned about what the number is and more wanting you to be able to just have a really good discussion with your donors about why it is what it is.
Yeah,
Yes,
I would agree with you on that. I mean, I kind of reject the whole idea of this. I mean, I think this really has to be looked at on an individual basis. I mean, if you run a food bank, for instance, you're buying a lot of food and collecting a lot of food, and your costs might be fairly low, your administrative costs, right? Because you're doing a lot of direct program. You got food going out the door, and you're working directly with your customers. If you are a legal impact litigation organization where you're doing impact litigation, but the costs really are the lawyers that you're using, then your administrative costs are going to be really high, and then sort of shows how this isn't a particularly useful measure of anything. So I think you're always looking at your impact. You're always looking at, I think your own internal metrics and kind of making a decision about, what is a useful metric for success for me? What is a reasonable administrative cost based on what it is that I'm trying to achieve? So I think there's really no good answer to it. I think it requires a much deeper analysis of sort of where you are and what your metrics are, and what they make sense for what you're trying to achieve.
But I would just add that because we are measured that way anyway, though, the watchdog organizations measure us that way. So you've got to get your story up on your website. You've got to get your financial story, your and make it be part of your stewardship. Make it be part of, you shape your story instead of letting the watchdogs judge you on one metric. It should be under 20%, and not looking at all the other factors. So I think you have to put your financial story together and make sure that you're telling that as part of your stewardship, as part of your solicitations, as part of your web, your online presence.
Yeah, and make it an asset, not a deficit.
Exactly. An asset. Here's where we are, and this is why strategic. And I love the word, Laurel, you used. Be strategic. And if you can show that you're there because it's strategically smart to be there, as opposed to you're screwing up, and sometimes our number is so low because we're undercapitalized. That's not a good thing either. Our admin is only 10%. Yeah, well, you're leaving tons of money on the table because you're so undercapitalized that, that number looks good, but you're not really getting done what you need to get done for your mission. So
you're turning over your development staff every 6 months because they're exhausted because they don't have enough capacity. Yeah, and I think especially to Joe's question, I mean, especially for a young nonprofit, I think you would expect that your admin and program and your admin and fundraising costs are probably going to be a little higher, right? Because you're building programs. So I think again that is just all part of the story.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a question from Lisa in the chat. It says, our trustees are focused on what the next campaign is. The investments we need to grow don't include new buildings. How do we communicate that we can make progress without a campaign?
Well, campaigns are not only about new buildings. Campaigns are about your vision. Campaigns are about what it is, the impact that you're trying to achieve. So those are two separate things. Should we have a campaign is one question, and that and I'll let Bob and Laurel talk to you about some of the the things that you'd ask yourself, is a campaign necessary? But campaigns can be about unrestricted giving. Campaigns can be about program. Campaigns can be about sustainability. It's all about your vision, and then your story, and then what your priorities are. And campaigns help you raise, this is across the board. You just get more 6- and 7-figure gifts when you're in campaign than when you're not. But maybe you don't need a campaign, and maybe you do. So I'll let Laurel or Bob speak to the second part of that question. Do we need a campaign?
Yeah, I actually think that people, the statistics are real, right? We do get more 6- and 7-figure gifts when we're in campaign, but I always wonder if that's a chicken and egg situation, right? And I think we're also more willing to ask for 6- and 7-figure gifts when we're in campaign. I think, again, I go back to the widget issue. I think sometimes we use campaigns as widgets. Like, I think we overutilize potentially campaigns as a way to ask for 6- and 7-figure gifts when the vision is always there. You always have needs for 6- and 7-figure gifts. And if you can create ways to, engage donors effectively, have good major gift strategy, go out and ask donors for those 6- and 7-figure gifts outside of campaign, it's completely possible. But I think especially for boards, campaigns it feels like we can't ask for those gifts unless we're in campaign, right? Or that's the motivating factor. When I think we have to recognize that for many donors, the motivating factor is impact, right? It's not, again, there are some donors who want to participate in a campaign and be part of that structure. And I think that's all, again, I think to Karen's point, do we need a campaign to get where we need to be? But let's be really critical about whether or not we can go out and get these gifts outside of a campaign as well.
The thing I would just add, though, that I don't disagree, but I guess I like campaigns a little bit more than you do. Because if your goal is 10 to 15 times what it is that you're raising annually,
right.
If that's what you need, then a campaign is a really good way. But if all you're trying to do is just increase giving, if all you're trying to do is build a major gift program, then go build a major gift program, to Laurel's point. But if you have needs that are not buildings, doesn't have to be a building, that's 10 to 15 times what you are bringing in annually, a well-run, well-thought-out campaign can achieve that for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with what you guys are saying. I like campaigns too when you're trying to make a leap of some kind. So I think also, so not just when you're trying to do a big fundraising lift, but really the way I think about a campaign is like an umbrella to get everybody moving in the same direction. And sometimes that's a really big fundraising lift, it usually is, but sometimes you can use a campaign for lots of other means. You can use it to expand your capacity in some way, both internally and in terms of your mission. You can use it to sometimes make useful changes just in terms of the culture or operating of your organization, like change your board culture and get your board to be more giving or more involved with fundraising. So I think that's another reason to have a campaign. But the way I think about campaigns is really, it's an umbrella for getting everybody focused on a thing or on a vision of some kind, and that often involves money, but it doesn't always exclusively involve money. Okay, well, I'll encourage you guys to continue to type your questions into the chat or into the Q&A. We did have one other question from email. It was sort of long, so I'm just gonna phrase it, but it was a question regarding how, like, if your alumni office in higher education is kind of divorced from your development operation and it doesn't really give and doesn't really raise money, what kinds of things should you start to think about in terms of shifting that and changing that culture?
Wow. Having grown up in higher ed, fundraising, it's so much open to that VP, the VP for advancement. If you are a gift officer someplace, down here, and nobody is asking the alumni office, the boss is not asking the alumni office to do things differently. I'm not saying that you can't start chipping away at that culture, but ideally, the VP has an overarching goal for everybody, and everybody has a role. Everybody has a role in engaging alumni. Barring that, if you don't have that leadership there, then I think it's can you cultivate that head of alumni relations and have them help you with two things. And these two things will help you raise money without them having to be fundraisers or and not scare them off. So the first thing you want them to do is to just be a steward at every alumni event. I want to thank everybody that's here that has invested in the annual fund. Thank you. This program couldn't have happened without it. Thank you. So you're not having to ask for money, you're saying thank you. Let that be part of everything that the alumni office does. Thank you. And the second thing that we need the alumni office to do is help us with engagement. Let us think about what is that suite of engagement opportunities, and can I, as a gift officer, access them? Can I make sure that you will give some favor to my, my guys and let them host, let them lead, let them, so those are two ways that maybe you down here can make an impact, but you need that VP to get his or her act together.
Yeah, it feels too, Karen, like there's a real, like, what's in it for me kind of, I think sometimes anytime we're doing collaboration with other departments, right? It's probably not even true of just, alumni relations and advancement. I've been getting a lot of questions lately about how do I get my communications team to better collaborate with development? I think it's true of anytime we're doing collaboration. I feel like it can't always feel like we're just asking them to do things for us, but how are we also showing the value proposition of that collaboration? Like, what's in it for alumni relations to better collaborate with us and to better coordinate and be strategic? And how's the advancement team helping alumni relations to better achieve their goals, in addition to alumni relations helping advancement achieve their goals?
Yeah, my mind always goes to having a plan, just as a practical matter, and this may again live higher up, but I think if there is a strategic plan, for the organization, and then there's kind of sub plans, that fit into that strategic plan, then I think it makes it much easier, because then everybody has to kind of justify what they're doing, and you're not having these siloed plans where we're doing this thing over here and we're doing this other thing over here based on our own internal goals, and it kind of forces everybody to work towards a single goal of some kind, and then it forces you to kind of justify why you're doing what you're doing and what the expected outcomes are in terms of that larger plan. So I think doing either joint planning, or better yet, having some kind of organization-wide strategic plan where each department has sub plans that again are work together, that are not just kind of their own separate actions that they'll be taking, I think is a helpful sort of practical way of dealing with this.
But that lives with that vice president, that lives with the AVP, that lives up here. And it's so important that there's also an attitude, to Laurel's point, about doing me a favor versus co-ownership. If there is a plan, and if it does come down, and if the VP has this overall, that alumni relations, communications, development, and information systems, the 4 pieces of advancement, if all of them have shared goals, then it's co-ownership, and you're not doing me a favor. But we need, manage up, show your boss this, this video. But we need that overarching goal where everybody co-owns everybody else's goals, that we're all in it together. My team used to call it the overaching goals, but I call them overarching goals. But say, oh, Karen's overaching goals.
Well, Joe has a question, but Joe, I'm gonna just sort of preempt the question and say, we probably don't know, we're not tax attorneys, so I'm not sure that we don't want to give any legal or tax advice as part of this. But I would say, check with a lawyer or accountant and kind of find that out. I'm not sure how that would work if you have a for-profit fiscal sponsor. It's an interesting question, but I don't think any of us are qualified, unfortunately, to answer that particular question. Well, we have about 4 minutes left. Are there any other questions? Type them in the chat. I don't know, Laurel, Karen, if anything has been coming up from your clients that you think might be just interesting to the group, questions that have come up.
Yeah, Laurel and I happened to have a very interesting conversation 2 nights ago. And we were talking about, now that there's so much emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion, yay. And now there's so much emphasis on, hybrid working. And, so maybe one of the things that got lost or not as high up is that there's still an issue about women and young men who go out and raise money from older people, that whole power dynamic, that whole, are we still thinking about and having conversations with our team about how to handle those situations, those harassment situations, those just uncomfortable, icky situations? We don't want to lose that because other things are, and rightfully, other things have become really important. But that still exists. And so there's some good information. Laurel, don't we have some good things on our website around this, or am I misremembering?
Yeah, I did a really great chat with some folks from Cal State Fullerton a while back that you can find on our blog about managing difficult situations with donors. And really, I think this is something that everyone should get trained on, right? Like if I'm in a situation, and even if it's not overt, if it's even just somebody says something to me that's even mildly offensive or just awkward, how do I deal with it, right? How do I deal with it in a way that's professional, that I don't lose my own integrity, but I also don't kind of put at risk any, relationship with my institution? And, so I think, go check out that chat with Cal State Fullerton. And if this is something that you're interested in, get in touch with us, because I think we're really passionate about making sure that fundraisers are well armed out there to just deal with situations when they come up, and it will for probably for all of you on here, it already has. And if it hasn't, it will. So, let's just prepare everybody for that effectively.
Yes.
Absolutely. All right. We can see if we can squeeze in one question in the last 60 seconds. We don't have alumni, but we have a great donor base committed to our mission. If we were to use our board members to connect with them over lunch, what is the one question that you would lead with to show you are thankful and interested in hearing their thoughts on making an impact through our organization?
So these board members are donors already. If they're donors already, I would ask them what they think the impact is. I think one of the great questions is to get somebody to tell you what is the impact rather than you telling them, because they'll feel it more, they'll believe it more. So you might pose it by saying, as you think about who we are and what we're accomplishing, and we thank you so much for being such a good donor and volunteer, but tell me, what is it about us? Why us? Why do you choose us? What is the impact that you think we're having? That's a great question. For somebody that doesn't know you, then you want to really ask those questions about philanthropy and who stewards you really well? Who do you, when you think about all the places you give to, which ones are on the top? Why are they on the top? Where do we fit in? Those are great. And, just download our strategic questions on our website, and you will find just a plethora of great questions.
We can't narrow it down to just one or two. We have many
We
good
have 6 pages.
of questions, and I do think it is up on the website. If for some reason it's not, you can always email us, mail@theosborngroup.com. We have general strategic questions, but we also have sector specific questions. So for environmental organizations or schools or community organizations, whatever it is that you may be involved with. So thanks, Karen. Thanks, Laurel.
Thanks,
Thanks
Bob.
everyone for joining us for another Ask Me Anything. We will continue this as long as there's interest. So I hope you'll all join us next month for another Ask Me Anything.
All right.
All right.
Take care,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.